Hello and welcome to Chabot News for May 14th, 2026. My name is Chantal and today we'll be covering ibogaine and how it helps treat traumatic brain injuries. In the entertainment news, Manny will tell you about the latest controversy involving Jimmy Kimmel. In sports news, Chris has information on the passing of a legend in the game of Major League Baseball. And finally, Greg will give you his top 5 Michael Jackson songs. All that and more coming up in today's edition of Chabot News. New research into psychedelic-assisted therapy is drawing national attention, particularly for its possible use in treating traumatic brain injury, PTSD, and addiction. A recent executive order supported by podcast host Joe Rogan and signed by President Donald Trump is pushing to expand federal research into substances including ibogaine. Bruce Malloy takes a look at both the promise and the risks.
Ibogaine is a naturally occurring psychedelic compound derived from the root bark of the tabernacle iboga shrub, a plant native to Central West Africa. Traditionally, the plant has been used in spiritual and healing ceremonies for generations. Currently, researchers in the United States are studying whether ibogaine may help treat traumatic brain injuries, PTSD, depression, and addiction.
This is the study that we conducted at Stanford. Just like Eric, most of these folks had PTSD in addition to traumatic brain injury beforehand, but after they had a significant reduction and crossed the line to no longer meet PTSD diagnosis after they received ibogaine.
Interest in the drug recently surged after President Trump signed an executive order aimed at accelerating psychedelic research after public advocacy from podcast host Joe Rogan and several veterans groups. Some of the most closely watched research is happening at Stanford Medicine, initially undertaken by the late psychiatrist Dr. Nolan Williams. A 2025 study by Dr. Williams, published in Nature Mental Health, followed 30 special operations veterans with traumatic brain injuries. Researchers reported major reductions in PTSD, depression, anxiety, and disability symptoms after treatment using the magnesium ibogaine protocol. Researchers believe ibogaine works through several mechanisms at once, affecting serotonin, dopamine, glutamate, and opioid receptor systems, while also potentially promoting neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize and form new neural connections. Additional studies are now attempting to replicate Stanford's findings and determine whether the improvements can be consistently reproduced in larger groups over longer periods of time. But scientists caution that ibogaine also carries serious risks. The drug has been associated with dangerous cardiac arrhythmias, and in some cases, death, particularly when used outside medically supervised settings. Experts also warn that early results do not yet answer questions about possible long-term neurological or psychological side effects. Other psychedelics, including psilocybin, MDMA, and ketamine-based therapies, are also being studied as possible alternatives to treating PTSD, depression, and addiction, with some researchers viewing them as having more manageable safety profiles under clinical supervision. Supporters argue that loosening federal restrictions on psychedelic research could accelerate scientific understanding, while critics stress that long-term clinical trials remain essential before widespread medical use.
Then once a drug is released to the general public, you have what's called effectiveness. We were studying efficacy before, now you're studying the effectiveness in large populations. These are people, many of them, who would never have been approved to get into a study.
I'm Bruce Malloy, reporting for Chabot TV.
Thanks for that report, Bruce. Researchers say the science behind psychedelic medicine shows promise, but emphasize that long-term studies are still needed. In Hayward, a man dumps his neighbor's cat in the wilderness for eating his livestock. A Hayward man is facing animal cruelty charges after authorities say he stole his neighbor's cat and released it in a remote area because it had been eating his rabbits and chickens. Antonio Preciado, 41, has been charged with animal cruelty and petty theft in connection with the case. according to the Alameda County District Attorney's Office. The victim reported to deputies on January 31st that his cat Silo had been missing since January 17th after the animal wandered onto Preciado's property. In a prior incident in December, Silo returned home with a metal PB pellet lodged in his leg. Authorities executed a search warrant at Preciado's property and found multiple BB rifles and metal pellets similar to the one previously removed from Silo's leg. Preciado was arrested and later told investigators he trapped Silo because the cat had eaten his rabbits and chickens. He admitted placing the cat in his vehicle, driving to the Eden Canyon Road area, and releasing it. Silo was found dead about 2 weeks later in the same area where the tracker had been discarded. George Washington University says it's investigating after a student was injured during Israel Fest last week. It cites reports that vials of an unknown substance were dropped during the event. The DC-based school says the action seemed to be an attempt to disrupt the pro-Israel gathering. GWU is condemning what it calls criminal action. It's unclear if the incident was connected to participants' Jewish faith. A canceled flight turned into a moving tribute for a retiring airline captain. Captain John Jackson's retirement flight with Spirit Airlines was canceled after the discount carrier began shutting down Saturday. Jackson instead boarded a Southwest flight home with his son. Southwest crew notified Baltimore Airport Fire and Rescue, which met Johnson's flight with a water cannon salute. Southwest also arranged cheers and champagne at the gate. Jackson said the team turned a sad day into an incredible moment. Spirit has canceled all upcoming flights and says customer service is no longer available. The decision puts 17,000 people out of a job. Now let's go to Manny with this week's entertainment news.
Thanks, Chantal. Disneyland is moving to modernize one of its oldest attractions. The California park tells the Los Angeles Times it will replace the gas-powered cars on its classic Autotopia ride with fully electric vehicles. A Disneyland official confirmed the engines will be retired within the next 30 months. With the transition expected in early 2027, the move comes after pressure from electronic vehicle advocates who urge Disney to ditch gasoline engines entirely instead of switching to hybrids. Autotopia opened with Disneyland in 1955 and remains the last original attraction still operating in Tomorrowland. Jimmy Kimmel was back in the hot seat again, this time because of a joke he made about Rudy Giuliani on his late-night TV show. Last Tuesday, he said that Giuliani rose from the grave in a joke about the former New York mayor being a vampire. Then on Sunday, it was announced that Giuliani was hospitalized in critical condition due to a bout of pneumonia. Monday, Kimmel denied rumors of being a psychic and said he hopes Giuliani lives another 100 years. This comes after Kimmel made a joke about Melania Trump being an expected widow days before the shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. That's it this week for entertainment. Back to you, Chantal.
Thanks, Manny. A preliminary hearing has been pushed back in the murder case against singer David. He's accused of killing 14-year-old Celeste Hernandez after she threatened to expose their relationship. Her body was found dismembered in the suspect's Tesla several months ago. The hearing, originally set for late May, is now scheduled for the end of June at the request of the defense. David faces several charges, including murder, sexual abuse of a child, and mutilating human remains. He has pleaded not guilty and remains in custody in a Los Angeles jail without bail. Voters in Indiana and Ohio are heading to the polls for state primaries on Tuesday. In Indiana, there are 7 state Senate races, each with Trump-backed candidates. The president is hoping to purge the Republicans who rejected his demands to redistrict the state's U.S. House map. And in Ohio, a state redistricting commission greenlit in a new U.S. House map last fall ahead of this year's midterms. Now, several Republicans are vying to take on Democratic Representative Marcy Kaptur in the Toledo-based 9th District. The outcome will set the stage for what's expected to be one of the GOP's best pickup opportunities on a difficult national congressional environment this fall. In Ohio, Vivek Ramaswamy won the Republican primary for governor in a landslide, while in Indiana, at least 5 Trump-backed candidates beat incumbent Republicans in their district races. Now we go to Chris with this week's sports report.
Thanks, Chantal. Whether you walk or run it, the Bloomsday course in Spokane, Washington is not easy. But imagine tackling the 7.5-mile race on your hands and feet. That's exactly what one man did, bear crawling the entire course to raise awareness about addiction recovery. Alexandra Cohen-Jarts reports.
A striking moment at the Bloomsday finish line, long after the race ended for thousands of other people, where after nearly 24 hours of bear crawling, Brenton Sconce finished his race, with a crowd cheering him on and his son by his side.
I never would have thought I could have done something like this, and I know I couldn't have done it in the past.
Sconce decided to bear crawl Bloomsday to raise money and awareness for his recovery foundation, which is called BEAR. It helps support addicts through aftercare scholarships.
And that comes from lived experience. Like, I received a scholarship 4 years ago.
And while he has been training for a year, this trek was not an easy one.
My hands were going numb. Everything was just hurting. My wrist started swelling up and hurting really bad. And so it would have been easy for me to just throw in the towel.
Sconce says there was multiple times that he wanted to quit, but that finishing this race was a non-negotiable. The message pulling him through: we recover.
We can do hard things, and hard doesn't equal bad.
Now, while what Brenton is doing is incredibly remarkable, it's also inspiring to see the amount of volunteers that have helped him along the way. His friends, family, and then also just people stopping by who want to give him words of encouragement as he completes this incredibly difficult feat.
And I don't really know him either, but I feel very inspired by that and just want to be a part of this.
One man who didn't even know Sconce joined in to help for hours by sweeping the ground in front of his path.
And I myself am in active recovery, so I wanted to help raise some money.
That's beautiful.
For recovery, yeah.
All these guys in white shirts, including my wife, especially my wife, they just kept me going. They reminded me of the mission. They reminded me of what I've been through.
Thanks, Alexandra. Sconce says his foundation is still accepting donations. For more information, go to bearrecoveryfoundation.com. Here is a story worth your time and energy, where donations and services make a great difference for success. Greg Driscoll has more.
Hello, I'm Greg Driscoll, and behind me is the future of Chabot College athletics and the football field, which is going to eventually have some great football games. But for right now, this is what we got, and the future looks very good.
We're very excited about the football field and getting access to it. I was originally told by my second season, so fall 2026, so this upcoming fall. It's looking like it's probably a little bit delayed. I've been told the rumors going around right now is January.
January this year?
January of 27.
Okay.
So we'd be able to have it starting next spring ball, next January. So the hope is fingers crossed, maybe we get a couple games on it late in the season. I know the turf will be done at some point here soon. I don't think the entire project will be done by the time the season starts. So like I said, a couple games, and that'd be huge. The biggest thing I think it's going to do for the school, the program, is our ability to recruit.
Contact Coach McMurray if you want to support and donate to the football program at Chabot College. Donations are greatly appreciated.
Yeah, for sure. At the junior college level, it's very important that we have community support. Having different type of donations as far as individual donations, bringing things in such as Gatorade, foods, things like that to the resource hub.
Come show your support to the Gladiators as they start their season in the fall. I'm Greg Driscoll. Back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Greg. The football program has high hopes for the future and is looking for big changes ahead. Sad news from the world of baseball. Longtime Atlanta Braves manager Bobby Cox has died. The Braves posted the news on social media. The organization says Cox was the best manager to ever wear a Braves uniform. He managed the team for 25 years. He led the Braves to 14 straight division titles, 5 National League pennants, and a World Series victory in 1995. Cox also managed the Toronto Blue Jays for 4 years. The 84-year-old was voted into baseball's Hall of Fame in 2014. He suffered a stroke in 2019 and had other medical issues. He had more than 2,500 wins in his career. That is the fourth most of any manager in baseball history. His legacy will live on as one of the greatest to ever manage professional baseball. That's it for This Week in Sports. Back to you, Chantal.
Thanks, Chris. In Palm Beach, Florida, county commissioners have voted to rename the city's international airport after President Donald Trump. The move comes after Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed a bill in March that approved the name change. Katie Bent has a reaction from residents.
Hot and at times heated inside the Palm Beach County Commission chambers as leaders took up a controversial issue, the renaming of Palm Beach International Airport.
The best thing that all of those people have in common, thank you so much for your indulgence, Madam Mayor, is that they do not have 34 felony convictions. They do not have lawsuits. They were not indicted for racketeering.
Would you please stop?
They do not have bankruptcies. And they did not sue the airport
Representative
3
Skidmore,
times.
please stop.
He is a phenomenal president. He has done a great job, and I'm sorry you didn't get your way when the vote happened.
Community members packing the room, some waiting hours to speak.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
I think our airport will get the special attention it deserves.
But through all the back and forth, one question kept coming up. What exactly is this vote about?
Today's vote is not whether to rename the airport.
Because that decision is already required under state law. Instead, commissioners are voting on a licensing agreement, a legal deal needed so the county can actually use the name President Donald J. Trump International Airport.
So not only would we lose our seat at the table, we would be penalized.
Yes.
County leaders say without it, the county could face legal issues or lose state funding. Because the name is owned by Trump's company, they need permission to use it. It also sets rules like who can make merchandise and how the name is used.
It's not necessarily for profit, but propaganda sounding. And he gets to approve the sellers of merchandise to the retailers in the airport.
The county says the agreement protects them and comes with no payments or royalties.
I heard some very disheartening comments about a sitting president. Whether you like him or not, there's a respect of office owed to a man.
And in a split 4-3 vote,
Mayor Baxter.
Absolutely, yes.
The agreement passed.
Please see that that passes 4-3.
Thanks for that report, Katie. The Federal Aviation Administration will still have the final say on the name change. If the FAA approves it, the change would take effect by July 1st. A man is dead after a confrontation turned violent inside a home in southeast Texas in the pre-dawn of Tuesday. Investigators say a man entered the home of his estranged wife in the town of Katy, outside Houston. A fight broke out with another individual believed to be dating the man's estranged wife. Police say a 15-year-old boy in the home then confronted the man estranged from his wife and put a chokehold on him until sheriff's deputies arrived. Authorities believe the teen was the man's son. When deputies arrived, they found the man in the front yard of the home. He was taken to a hospital and pronounced dead. An autopsy will be done to determine the cause of death. Authorities are still investigating and have not yet filed any charges. The U.S. Postal Service on Tuesday released new stamps to mark the 100th anniversary of Route 66. The pan of 16 contains 8 images. They feature vintage cars, historic places, and more. Route 66 was established on November 11, 1926, with more than 2,400 miles of roadway. The historic highway passes through 8 states, linking Chicago to Los Angeles, with numerous rural communities in between. The Route 66 Forever stamps are available at post offices and online at USPS.com. There's lots of gaming news this week, including a surprise announcement from Nintendo about a popular character's new game. Enrique Peña reports.
Warping in out of nowhere, Star Fox is heading to Switch 2. Following his appearance in the Super Mario Galaxy movie earlier this year, Fox McCloud and his team have a new game release on the calendar. Nintendo made a surprise reveal that Star Fox, based on Star Fox 64, will be heading to Switch 2 consoles June 25th. Dungeons & Dragons streaming group Legends of Adventures have very successfully launched a Kickstarter for a new game. The streamers are publishing Neon Odyssey, described as a space opera with fantasy elements. Their minimum goal was $60,000. They surpassed $3.7 million after just over 3 hours, and more than $5.5 million after 24 hours. The campaign runs through June 3rd. And if a cozy train driving game is on your list of things to play, a bumpy ride is pulling into the station. The PC game featuring exploration, passenger, and freight transport in its gameplay is out now on Steam. I'm Enrique Pena.
Thanks, Enrique, for showing us these games. The Iranian foreign minister and his Chinese counterpart sat down in Beijing on May 6 for their first face-to-face meeting since the war began. Tehran's top diplomat said cooperation between the two countries would be, quote, stronger than ever. It comes about a week ahead of President Trump's planned visit to China. CNN's Stephen Jiang has more from Beijing.
The timing is obviously very interesting for this meeting between the two countries' two foreign ministers, their first face-to-face communication since the war broke out. And more importantly, though, this meeting took place just 1 week before Donald Trump is due here for that high-stakes summit with Chinese leader Xi Jinping, already delayed once because of this very war. Now, in their readout after the meeting, the Chinese didn't say anything surprising. They really highlighted the so-called four-point peace proposal put out by Xi Jinping a little while ago, emphasizing the importance of sovereignty and international law, and more immediately calling for a lasting ceasefire. The conventional wisdom here, of course, is anytime the U.S. is mired in a quagmire, the Chinese benefit strategically. And the Chinese also continue to buy Iranian oil despite U.S. sanctions and really giving the Tehran regime an economic lifeline. But analysts agree the Chinese priorities are more practical, even though they are trying to strike a balance and playing a long game here, because the Chinese economy does need reliable access to energy to fuel growth at home, but also, more importantly, a stable global market for its exports. So a prolonged war would hurt them on both fronts. That's why in their readout, they made a point of calling on all relevant parties to address this global concern of the resumption of safe and normal passage through the Strait of Hormuz. And the other thing, of course, is the Chinese did play a role in bringing the current ceasefire, but they may not be in any hurry to ramp up pressure on the Iranians because, one, they are better prepared to deal with any oil shocks than anyone else because of their stockpile and their pivot to green energies. And also, they may want to wait for an in-person ask from President Trump so they could actually play up this potential positive result from the Trump-Xi summit. Now, the other thing a lot of analysts have said, of course, is this war is actually helping reinforce Beijing's global messaging about it being a cornerstone of global stability and innovation, in sharp contrast to Washington. So, in the words of one analyst who talked to us, the U.S. is fighting without winning, and China is winning without fighting. Stephen Zhang, CNN, Beijing.
Thanks for that report, Stephen. There were indications that China had summoned Iran for talks ahead of President Trump's visit next week. It is thought that China was trying to ensure the opening of the Strait of Hormuz as they rely on the route for up to 50% of their oil imports. Now we go to Greg with this week's Top 5.
Hi, I'm Greg Driscoll, and let me start by saying the king of pop, Michael Jackson, has amazing songs, almost too many, a top 5. But here goes. Coming in at number 5 is Man in the Mirror, a powerful emotional anthem about responsibility and social change. It was very soulful and is one of his most meaningful songs. Then coming in at number 4 is Smooth Criminal, known for the gravity-defying lean and its sharp rhythmic beat. A fan favorite that brings out his style and choreography. Coming in at number 3 is Beat It, a fusion of pop and rock that featured a legendary guitar solo. This was played by Eddie Van Halen. Its anti-violence message still resonates to fans of the King of Pop all over the world to our present era. Coming in at number 2 is Thriller, a personal favorite of mine, and is always used during the Halloween season. It is also the title track from MJ's best-selling album of all time. The groundbreaking music video with zombies and cinematic storytelling changed the industry. And finally, coming in at number 1 is Billie Jean. This is arguably the King of Pop's signature song that has a bass line that is instantly recognizable, and MJ also performed it at Motown 25, where he introduced the moonwalk to the world. It was simply an amazing sight to see. That's it for my top 5. I'm Greg Driscoll. Back to you, Chantal.
Thanks, Greg. The U.S. Secretary of State announced that the combat operation against Iran, which began in February, has ended, and President Donald Trump says the U.S. will temporarily pause the operation to guide ships through the Strait of Hormuz, but continue to enforce the blockade of the key waterway. Meantime, President Trump has not ruled out resuming a bombing campaign if negotiations collapse, and there is still no permanent peace deal in place as Iran and the United States trade blows. Cheryl Hubbard has the latest.
Despite reported military action involving U.S. and Iranian forces, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said the truce between the nations is holding.
No, the ceasefire is not over.
The Pentagon says Iran has attacked U.S. forces more than 10 times since the ceasefire took effect, but says it's below the threshold for restarting major combat operations. The U.S. military said Monday it shot down 7 Iranian small ships in the Strait of Hormuz. But Tuesday, U.S. leaders maintained that the U.S. posture is defensive.
We're not looking for a fight, but Iran also cannot be allowed to block innocent countries and their goods from an international waterway. Iran is the clear aggressor, harassing civilian vessels, threatening mariners from every nation.
The price of Brent crude oil, the worldwide benchmark, hit a record high for 2026 Monday at more than $114 a barrel before retreating later Tuesday. President Trump downplayed the cost.
That's a very small price to pay for getting rid of a nuclear weapon from people that are really mentally deranged.
I'm Cheryl Hubbard reporting.
The world is like, by the way.
Thanks for that report, Cheryl. If the strait remains closed, some experts say gas could top $5 in the coming weeks. AAA says regular unleaded gasoline is averaging $4.48 a gallon as of Tuesday. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has issued a renewed warning to ships intending to transit the Strait of Hormuz. According to state-run media, Iran launched a new system to govern maritime traffic through the critical waterway. That's all for Chabot News this week. Thanks to all the students and staff in the Mass Communications Department here at Chabot College for making this production possible. You can watch us anytime online at youtube.com/ChabotTV. Stay tuned to KCTH Channel 27 on Comcast for more Chabot TV.